Hi there, Godfather of Anxiety again. Just wanted to make a short video about dealing with ignorance and stereotypes when it pertains to mental health. I know that I've covered in a couple of videos I've recently done, I've covered some of the misconceptions that people have about anxiety and about depression. This is kind of a bit of an extension from that, and maybe a little more detailed into the particulars as to why these stereotypes can be and this ignorance can be so damaging to the people who suffer from these anxiety spectrum conditions, in particular in my channel, but mental health conditions in general are extremely difficult to deal with by themselves. And if you have to deal with people, and I'll run through some of the things that people may think, you have to deal with that. And even from people that you love very much, you will have to deal with some of these stereotypes and some of the ignorance. And it can be very hurtful, and it can also be very detrimental to treatment and recovery. So I'm just going to go over a few of these. And, I think it's important to do this because, especially for men, but for women too, I've mentioned this so many times, there's such a stigma attached to even having a mental health issue, much less seeking treatment or making some type of lifestyle adjustments to accommodate it. And, that's really the only way you get better from, any of the anxiety spectrum conditions will be by getting treatment and also making changes. That's going to be the road to recovery. So, and this ignorance and these stereotypes can really undermine that. So, I'm going to go through a few of them. The first one I'm going to do is basically, some of the nonsense that you hear as a man. Basically, that men shouldn't have mental health issues, that men aren't as emotional and therefore shouldn't have mental health issues. That's absolute nonsense, okay? Study after study shows that men and women are the same amount emotional. Now let's realize that there may be some differences in the way the emotion is expressed and articulated. And again, we're speaking in generalizations here. We're not speaking hard and fast rules. You probably know some guys that, cry at the drop of a hat, and you probably know some women that are very stoic. But that's not even the issue about emotions. Emotions really just stem from caring. And a lot of the times when we're thinking about men and emotion, I think we go right to crying, right? Either crying or hysteria. We go to these, and we have to remember, anger is an emotion. There's a reason why men have to pay more for auto insurance than women. And it's, men are very emotional. Anger is an emotion. Excitement is an emotion. And it really just stems from caring. If somebody's not emotional, they don't care. Let's think about it. Caring is an emotion. And if things matter to you, that's going to evoke an emotion. So certainly I hope that men are emotional, and I hope that women are emotional, because you need that in order to care, to be happy, and to have a life where you actually accomplish something. So emotions are essential. And that's a bunch of malarkey, to be polite, when you'll hear somebody say, oh, men shouldn't be emotional. Trust me, the man that you think isn't emotional is emotional. If he cares about anything. Now, if he's just, a shell with no soul who, doesn't care about anything deeply and is apathetic about everything, then regardless of gender, if someone's like that, they're probably not very emotional, but what a miserable life, right? So, emotions are not, a gender issue, like seemingly the media likes to portray sometimes. Emotions are part of human nature, and we all experience them, and we all should experience them, and they're part of the great experience of being a human being. So that was the first one I wanted to mention, as far as, really ignorant misconception / stereotypes about, and that one is in particular about men. But these are just I'll run through some of the other ones that you will run into frequently. First of all, and I mentioned some of these in the other videos I've done, but mental illness is not a real illness. And again, nonsense, right? These things have been shown over and over again to be real, and actually do have physiological causes. So you really put yourself in an uneducated light if you think that mental health conditions are not real. Also, I've mentioned before, people think that you're people or yourself. Any of these things you can misapply towards yourself as well. We can think that it's a sign of weakness, that mental health issues are a sign of weakness. Absolutely untrue. This is absolutely untrue. Again, in the case, let's take anxiety. Although they don't understand every mechanism involved in these mental health issues, they do understand that certain neurotransmitters and the levels that they are at in your brain have an effect on whether or not you may be prone to some of these mental health issues. That's why we know that anxiety is frequently treated with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? SSRIs. And, this, again, is to elevate your serotonin levels. And that's especially used to treat depression, but also can be used to treat anxiety. There is, no reason to think that you're weak if you have a mental health condition, or if you know somebody who has a mental health condition, or an anxiety spectrum disorder, that they're weak. That is not true. And here's something I want people to think about. And think of the person who's experiencing, maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else, but they're having panic attacks, or they're having anxiety, they're clinically depressed. Now, look at their lives prior to this. Did they seem like a weak person? Were they able to, go through a lot? Because a lot of the people that have these conditions have fought in wars. That takes an unbelievable amount of courage. That's life and death. A lot of the people who suffer from these conditions have been firefighters or police officers. When I look at my own life, I wasn't a superhero, but I did lots of things that took a tremendous amount of both strength of character and strength in general. And I accomplished a lot before I had before I developed panic disorder and these anxiety disorders. So if you look at that, what happened? Did the person just fall off a cliff? Did they just give up? No. No, this is a physiological problem. The neurotransmitters are being dumped in fight or flight situations. That's in the case of panic attacks or generalized anxiety. So it causes a host of physiological problems, stomach upset, irritable bowel. I mean, I could go on and on. So again, to insinuate that they're not real or it's weakness is just very uneducated. You're really showing that you've done no research or educated yourself even slightly about anxiety spectrum conditions if you are of that mind. They are extremely real. They're not a reflection of someone's strength, either of character or of person. Some of these other ones, like you can just snap out of it. That goes along with this. No, you can't. Boy, I wish you could. Nobody is more miserable about mental health conditions, specifically anxiety spectrum disorders, than the person experiencing them. I'll give you for instance. Imagine you get that 3:00 in the morning phone call. That terror in your chest. That sharp pain you get because you're like, uh-oh, why is someone calling me now? Now imagine if you just had that 24 hours a day for no reason. Would that be something that you could just dismiss or snap out of? Does that make any sense? See, it doesn't. And why are you like that? Well, science isn't 100% sure on why these things happen. It does seem to be hereditary. Certain genetic profiles are more likely to experience some of these mental health conditions. But it's just the fact that if you look at people who experience these mental health conditions, you will just see, people who have no history of anything, of any inability to cope or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, these neurotransmitters are being dumped like they would be dumped in a fight or flight situation, that involved a life or death circumstance. And often they're just turned on. And it makes you hypersensitive to all kinds of stimuli that you wouldn't even notice if you didn't have it. Just a real horrible, horrible thing to experience. So again, it's real. That's another thing, and this is probably more true of just mental health conditions in general. But people think that if you have a mental health condition, you're unstable. Well, is that really true? Let's think about it. I mean, you may need medication to do, to get yourself to work up the nerve to do certain things. But people with mental health issues are not inherently violent or prone to, some impulsive behavior that would be, either offensive or criminal in nature. That's just not true. And, certain mental health issues, if we're getting into things like paranoid schizophrenia, although with treatment, that's treated very successfully, and there are lots of people who do very well with that condition. I suppose there are some mental health conditions that you could argue might be a sign of instability, or at least make you more likely to be unstable. But for the most part, especially when you're dealing with anxiety spectrum conditions or depression, those are not unstable people, right? Those are just people that are, affected by mental health issues, but certainly aren't a danger to themselves or to anyone else. So that's another ridiculous one. Another ridiculous one is that they're lazy. It couldn't be further from the truth. Again, like I've said, people with these conditions tend to care very deeply. They care very deeply about things, and people who care a lot about things generally aren't lazy people. Generally, if you care a lot, you want to do a lot. You want to accomplish a lot. And if you're not able to do something because of a physiological problem, which is what fight or flight chemicals being dumped is, it does not make you lazy. It doesn't make you lazy at all. And, again, I encourage, whether it's yourself or who has either depression or anxiety now, or whether you have a family member who does, look at their life before, look at your life or their life before they had it. Were you a lazy person? Was this person a lazy person? No, probably not. Probably they were the antithesis of that. They were probably active and, ambitious, wanted to get a lot done. But because of this condition, that's why I think people look at it and they're like, wow, how'd he go from that, or how'd she go from that to that? Well, it's so funny how different it is. If someone has a physical health issue that you can see, you don't question why someone, maybe their appearance or their itinerary changes because they're getting chemotherapy for cancer. But if you have a mental health condition, and you basically start avoiding everything, and maybe you put on weight or whatever, you're thought of as this lazy person who just stopped caring about life. And nothing could be further from the truth. People with depression and anxiety spectrum conditions care deeply about things. And so anyways, that's some of the ones I wanted to mention. I don't want to make too long of a video. I wanted to cover two, because, I knew when I did the channel, I knew that I would run into, ignorance. It's just, first of all, anybody who goes on YouTube, you understand, the part of the great thing about the platform is how many people you can reach. But when you reach a broad spectrum of people, you're going to encounter, people that, you could either call them trolls if you wanted to. I think that, there's some very well-meaning ones, and I encourage discourse, and I have no problem with people disagreeing with things that I say. Again, something that's true for me or that worked for me might not work for you. And, I have no issue with, constructive discussions and comments. Whether they're disagreements or not are fine with me. But some of the things that that I've gotten in the comments is that men shouldn't be emotional. Well, I covered that earlier in the video. Men are very emotional. Men should be emotional. If you're not emotional, you might as well raise your hand and say, I don't care. Because emotion is caring. That's what emotion is. I don't know what the definition in people's minds are of emotions, but emotions are anger, joy, hope. I can go on and on with emotions, sadness, and they certainly are not relegated to one gender. They, thank goodness, they are experienced by all of us human beings. Another comment I got is that, you're weak. You're weak if you have these anxiety conditions. You're just weak. And another one I got is you're wasting time. You're wasting your time. So, you know, it's expected to get these kind of, you know, comments. Oh, and another one I've gotten was that you can just stop or be snapped out of panic attacks, you know, by another person yelling at you. I wish. That'd be great. If all it took was my wife yelling at me for a panic attack to stop, you know, we could have solved that a long time ago. The level of ignorance with that is off the charts. Now, again, as I've told you guys, getting any type of engagement during a panic attack very well may help. But to insinuate that you can stop it or snap out of it is such an ignorant concept. And clearly, when someone does that, they're telling you they've never had a panic attack. That's what they're telling you. It's an open admission. They've never had one, and they've never even researched them. And they're going by their own misconceptions. Now, finally, to finish off the video, I just want to mention some of the things and some of the reasons why it's so important not to believe these negative stereotypes, not to believe the ignorance that's out there about mental health. Because these are some of the after effects or side effects, if you will, of buying into those ignorant mindsets and those stereotypes. Reduced hope. If you think that, if you believe all of these stereotypes, that you're lazy, that you don't care, that, you know, you're weak, it's going to take away your hope. Another one is, it obviously goes right along with hope, is self-esteem. You're going to have, and, you know, I made a whole video about self-esteem. It gets destroyed by anxiety spectrum conditions, by anxiety and depression. Your self-esteem takes an unbelievable hit. Now, you know, there's lots of things in our lives that can lower our self-esteem. You know, I battled my weight even when I was a youth, even when during puberty. During that time, I got quite chubby, and, you know, that can be a difficult thing to deal with, you know, and it may take some time to build your self-esteem back up, you know, after going through that. But the way that your self-esteem is destroyed by, you know, these mental health conditions goes so much deeper, even than, you know, some of the things that you might, you know, have your self-esteem lowered by externally, because you're kind of with these conditions, it's kind of coming from inside. You feel like the flaw is with you, right? The world around you or other people, things can look fine, they can look great, but for some reason you can't accomplish it, and you can't see it in the mirror. So these conditions, they destroy your self-esteem. Why don't I feel like I used to? You know, why do I have these awful feelings all the time? Why do I have these physical symptoms all the time? And, you know, and everybody else is functioning fine, and here I am, you know, nothing that you can see, but, you know, I'm putting on weight, I'm having a hard time going places, it destroys your self-esteem. At least it took, that was the longest thing, I think, to get back after I started being treated successfully. After the 6 years where I wasn't treated successfully, I think the hardest thing to get back was my self-esteem, because my weight had ballooned up to 365 pounds. I was, you know, I struggled at work, you know, and, you know, I felt like, obviously, when you're untreated, when you have an untreated mental health issue, it's not, you know, a real good thing for a marriage. So it took a while to get to build my self-esteem back up. Another thing that happens with these stereotypes, it actually will worsen your symptoms, especially if you're applying them to yourself. Because, you know, I noticed one thing with clinical depression, boy, does it feed itself. You start not feeling the way you should about things. You don't care. You don't have that feeling of caring, sometimes one way or the other, you know, and so you're not caring about things. And then that leads to, you know, even more numbness emotionally, because, you know, you start to not look like yourself. You start to not do the things you used to do, and your depression gets worse. I know mine did. I was depressed at 275 pounds. I was really depressed at 65 pounds. You know, that those things don't help. So, and when you start to believe some of the things, like either it's not real. So again, when something's not real, then this is all just you. It's like, oh, I made this choice. I just wanted to tap out of life and just let myself go. And I know that the people who tune into the channel know that that's not the case. That wasn't the case with you, I'm sure, if you've gone through this. And if you have a loved one who's going through this, it's not the case with them either. So just remember that. And the most important thing about these stereotypes and this ignorance is, and what it does to people, is that it keeps them from seeking treatment. Especially men, but women as well. It's not real. It's all in your head. You know, you're weak. And if you believe those things, whether about yourself or about someone else, it's going to keep either them or you from getting the treatment that you should. Because you don't feel there's a real issue there in the first place. And it's something you should just be able to get past or snap out of. And I wonder how many people we've lost because they had been ingrained in them that mental health wasn't real and that it was weakness. I wonder how many people have decided to tap out because they were too embarrassed to talk to a mental health professional, or they were too embarrassed to tell a family member what's going on. Guys, don't let the ignorance of others or stereotypes, or don't let that same ignorance and stereotypes maybe you've been taught keep you from getting treatment. Or by extension, if you have a loved one who's experiencing these conditions, you know, don't let those stereotypes, you know, affect the way that you treat them so that they are reticent or reluctant to get treatment. Treatment is the quickest way to get better. I know that sometimes we run into, in the United States, I can speak for the United States. I know that the treatment for mental health sometimes can be a struggle to find the right person. But if you have had a bad experience, keep trying. And at least confide in a family member and your doctor about what's going on. Because guys, that's the only way these things can be addressed. It's the only way you can get better. You know, if you just try to white knuckle it, you're going to, at least my experience, I got 6 years of my life that I can't get back. And during those 6 years, although some amazing things did happen kind of around me, I never really got any real joy or satisfaction out of anything during those 6 years. And I just don't want the people out there to waste that time by not getting treatment. You might need medication. It's for me, I needed medication to get me from here down to here. At the time that I went and was successfully treated, I was experiencing derealization, depersonalization. I was having panic attacks. I was deeply clinically depressed. I was at my breaking point. I really was. And it was that desperation that got me to try for a third time to get treatment. And guys, that's all I want for whether you're, young, old, male, female. If you're experiencing these conditions, get help. Don't let some, idiots take on mental health or something that you've been taught that was not true. Don't let that keep you guys from getting treatment. And don't let that keep you from helping a loved one who's going through this from getting treatment. Treatment is a good thing. If you're unsatisfied with the treatment that you receive initially, find another mental health professional. And again, there's not magic fixes, right? You wish you could just, take this pill, it's better. And some people have a lot of success, with either medication or cognitive behavioral therapy, and it goes, they get better really quickly. For me, recovery was not linear. It took time. It took about 6 weeks before the medication started to really work. And then after that, I had to unlearn a whole bunch of, negative thought patterns and magical thinking and things that I developed over 6 years of being untreated. So, okay, so the video went longer than I wanted, but I just felt like this was an important video to make because the main thing I want for the people who tune into the channel is to know that they need to get treatment. It's okay to let someone know about it. It's not weakness. And, life can be so much better when you get treatment, when you acknowledge it instead of just trying to bury it inside. It will get better. It did for me. My life is exponentially better since I've gotten properly treated. And, I try not to dwell on the time that I lost, and I try to make the most of the time that I have. And I started the channel to try to help other people be productive and, get the most out of the time that they have. It's so precious here on this earth. So that's about all I wanted to say. Guys, thanks so much for the engagement, the comments. Please keep them coming. If you know anybody going through this, if you're going through this, I have a lot of videos now where that touch on a number of subjects and give my perspective. It's not really going to be something that you can just read on Google. It's going to be tips and things that I've learned that have helped me over these last 21 years dealing with anxiety spectrum disorders and depression. So thank you so much, and until my next video, take care.